Let me at it, Mark. Let me at it. Turned on my mic like 20 seconds ago. I was so fired up to get here this morning. It was I don't want to say it was a rough night with the baby, but we're getting through it on night number 4 of baby number 3. Many of you will know how that goes. But it is great to be here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. So yesterday, Governor Mike Parson from Missouri answered a question that many of us have been wondering for the better part of 5 days. Did anybody around the Chiefs play any role in his decision to commute the sentence of Britt Reid, the son, of course, of Chiefs head coach Andy Reid, who has been in prison since prosecutors said he was intoxicated and driving at about 84 miles an hour in a 65-mile-an-hour zone when his Dodge truck hit 2 cars on an entrance ramp to 435 near Arrowhead back in 2021, right before the Super Bowl. That left a 5-year-old girl in critical condition. Did the Chiefs at all reach out to the governor and say anything about Britt Reid and commuting a sentence? Well, yesterday, Mike Parson's spokesperson put out a statement to the Kansas City Star that read as follows: "No request, official or otherwise, was made on behalf of Mr. Reid for this commutation. Contacting victims' families is not part of the governor's office's clemency process and has not been for any of the nearly 4,000 clemency cases Governor Parson has decided on throughout his nearly 6 years in office." So 2 things there. First off, nobody reached out to the governor's office on behalf of Britt Reid. And then the other thing that the governor got flack for in this case was not reaching out to Ariel Young's family. Well, as it turns out, that's not really something that the governor claims his office would do in any other commutation. So that's the answer from the governor. Now, whether or not you think there was an official request from the Kansas City Chiefs to commute the sentence of Britt Reid is a story that we can look at and either believe or not believe. Do I think there was an official phone call from anybody with the team, anybody with the family saying, "Governor, we would like you to commute the sentence of Britt Reid as soon as possible, as soon as you are willing to"? Probably not. Would it be naive to think that there was not at least a wink-wink, nod-nod from somebody somewhere asking for this? It would be naive to think that there was not somehow, some way, some conversation about this. That being said, when you look at this Britt Reid case, as people have been freaking out about it the last few days, and I understand it to some degree, Britt Reid was going to walk in about 8 weeks. Britt Reid was set to not be a free man, but certainly walk out of prison around May 1st. Instead, he's out on March 1st, which makes me wonder the political calculation for Governor Mike Parson and why he would want to jump the gun by 8 weeks and take this kind of political heat.
I think, to your point, perhaps the meetings took place at the lake house, like in Ozark, right?
Yeah.
Wendy Bird was there.
Wendy Bird kind of chauffeured and put together and mediated the entire meeting with a couple of, her thug bodyguards in the background.
Nothing official happened, just a visit to the lake house.
I like that scene. We got an Ozark reference by 6:10 in the morning, so John's good for the day. He can take off. Well done. But, for those wondering about Eric DeValcanair, the former KCPD detective who is still sitting in prison right now, many people believe wrongfully so, I have never been more optimistic. I'm even more optimistic today than I was yesterday that Mike Parson is going to do the right thing. And he is going to either pardon Eric DeValcanair or, at the very least, commute the sentence of Eric DeValcanair. Because the fact that Mike Parson is willing to commute the sentence of Britt Reid 8 weeks before he is set to leave, that tells me that, Mike Parson is kind of doing what he wants to do. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to like it. But he's not worried about what the Kansas City Star is going to write about him. he's certainly not worried about what Jean Peters Baker is going to say about him, the outgoing Jackson County prosecutor. So, as we had Charlotte on Sunday and this Britt Reed commutation came down on Friday, my phone was blowing up all weekend about it. How could they do this? What about Eric? And I understand those feelings. But with each passing day, I become more confident that we are going to be in a situation where we are going to see Eric DeValcanaire get taken care of from the standpoint of a commutation or a pardon by this governor's office. And yesterday you heard from Sarah DeValcanaire, the wife of Eric. She was on this show exclusively talking about his situation. And here's part of what she had to say about that hopeful pardon.
I am just hoping and praying, like so many others, that he will step in and use the executive power he has as governor to grant Eric the full pardon that I think he rightfully deserves. I looked back at his record while the governor's been in office, and he has granted well over 600 pardons or even commuted sentences. And although I'm not here to talk about those cases or those people, I feel like I am an expert on Eric.
That was Sarah DeValcanaire yesterday right here on this show. And it's something that was, powerful to always hear her speak about her husband, who, of course, is sitting in prison right now. All his options in the legal process have been exhausted. So now this sits solely in the hands of the governor of Missouri. And as a man in law enforcement himself, who has a background, who built a career in law enforcement, who knows how law enforcement, and this case in particular, was in large part a political prosecution by Jean Peters Baker, going back to the shooting and killing of Cameron Lamb back in December of 2019. I'm hopeful that the governor, who took a lot of heat on this Britt Reed commutation, is willing to take just as much heat, if not more heat, when it comes to Eric DeValcanaire's case. It is going to be very telling. And I think the governor's got the backbone to do it. I'm confident. I know some aren't, and they want to knock Mike Parson because they just don't like him, and that's your right to not like Mike Parson. But I am confident right now, unlike many, that at some point it's going to come. Maybe it'll take longer than it needs to. And I understand if you're Sarah DeValcanaire and the DeValcanaire family, every day feels like a month. Every day that you feel like he should not be in there feels like a week, a month, a year. I get that. I'm sympathetic to it. However, I'm willing to bet that there might be a reason this one is taking a little bit longer. And now that all the legal options have been exhausted, there's no more excuses. Now it's on Mike Parson's desk, and now let's see what he's going to end up doing. 913-408-7957 as we kick it off on a Thursday morning on KCMO Talk Radio. The mayor of Kansas City, Quentin Lucas, is going to be here at 7:30. And I figured we'd have a conversation about the ballparks and everything else going on in town. Until a viral video was put out there by Libs of TikTok 2 nights ago that has since racked up 2 million views of the mayor and many on the city council reading about transgender teddy bears. So if you missed this, I will share the clip with you, but the mayor responded to it on social media yesterday. This came down last night after 2 million views were racked up of the mayor and many on his staff and many on the city council reading about transgender teddy bears. We'll tell you what the mayor said ahead of his 7:30 appearance here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. You know what I didn't read to my girls last night? This creepy-ass book introducing Teddy. I skipped that one amazingly. I mean, I got all these kids' books around the house. I got a 5-year-old, a soon-to-be 3-year-old, and a newborn who just came into the world 4 days ago now. And amazingly, I'm not reading them books about transgender teddy bears. I call me old school, I guess. Call me old-fashioned. Call me a prude. Call me whatever. Don't call me late for dinner, but call me any of those things. But I have not gotten to the point where I'm reading my little girls books about transgender teddy bears before bedtime. This would be a stark difference from the Kansas City, Missouri City Council, or members of the city council, who elected to read on camera this book called Introducing Teddy that has since gone viral with now over 2 million views. Here's a little bit about this book and what it sounds like.
I will always be your friend, Thomas.
Thomas the Teddy took a deep breath.
I need to be myself, Errol.
In my heart, I've always known that I'm a girl Teddy, not a boy Teddy.
I wish my name was Tilly, not Thomas.
Is that why you've been so sad? Errol asked.
I don't care if you're a girl Teddy or a boy Teddy.
What matters is that you are my friend. You're the best friend a bear could have, said Tilly.
All right, there's a little excerpt from this video that had like 40 views on YouTube and then went viral courtesy of Libs of TikTok 2 nights ago and racked up now 2.2 million views. So the mayor of Kansas City, Quentin Lucas, responded to this video yesterday on X. And here's what he wrote. One of the blessings of life in this country is that I have the freedom to choose which books I will read to my child each night. And so do you. I'm always proud to support helping one belong. Happy Read Across America Week. That is from Quentin Lucas on his X page yesterday afternoon, responding to this viral video. Now, the mayor was one of 6 members of the city council to end up on this video. The others declined to be a part of it. I reached out to people on the city council yesterday, and they confirmed to me that everybody was asked to be in this video, or I should say was offered to be in this video. And needless to say, there were many who were not interested in being a part of the video. I can tell you for a fact there are many people who said, I'm not being in this. I'm not being a part of this. So, no, I am not going to join you in reading a book about transgender teddy bears live on the air. And what this really was about, because I got the initial request that came out from the press secretary's office. Her name is Sheree Honeycutt. She used to work on TV here in Kansas City. And she said in her letter request to the city council, Tuesday, March 5th is National Day of Reading, which is an event supporting stories of trans and non-binary youth. The Kansas City Public Library hosts a monthly pre-recorded Rainbow Story Time on their social media channels and is partnering with the city this month. It would be posted on March 5th. This month, the selected book would be Introducing Teddy, a gentle story about gender and friendship. The concept is for each reader to read 1 or 2 pages of the short picture book and then stitch all the videos together for a collaborative reel with the library on Instagram. Filming is going to take place on this day at this time. If you're unable to make it at that time but want to participate, please let us know. So that's how this came about. There is National Reading Day, which is March 2nd, Dr. Seuss's birthday. And then there's this made-up National Day of Reading, which is put together by this group called Human Rights Campaign Foundation, which is a celebration of stories supporting transgender and non-binary youth. It's only been around for the better part of not even a decade. It's, once again, just a made-up way to push this kind of nonsense on children. That's all it is. It's got nothing to do with Dr. Seuss. It's got nothing to do with National Reading Week. It's simply a made-up holiday by extremists and those who want to indoctrinate kids to push this stuff on toddlers. And that's what this book is geared towards, 3 to 6-year-olds. That's what it says on the description. So the mayor responds to this, as I noted, and he says here, I have the freedom to choose which books I read to my child each night. And he's absolutely right about that. But that's not what anyone is upset with, who has been upset or confused by this over the last 24 hours. I've never said, certainly, that Quentin Lucas can't read whatever books he wants to read to his kids, but something tells me that in his own home, Quentin Lucas is much more traditional. I would bet a pretty penny, knowing him as I do, that he ain't reading Introducing Teddy to his kid. And I mean that as a compliment. I think this is all politics. I think this is all about, appeasing factions of the most progressive people in Kansas City to say, hey, I'm an ally. I'm one of you. I'll read Introducing Teddy. I'll get up there on the camera and read about transgender teddy bears. Sure. Absolutely. Sign me up. I won't let you down. I just think it's all politics. That's it. And nothing more than that. And that was the calculation that was made here. But it was such a misstep because now you get blasted on social media. 2 million people, over 2 million people, have seen this video that prior to 2 nights ago had 40 views on YouTube. For what? It's just politically stupid. It's not, that it should be illegal for you to read a book to your child, right? Although we do have like ratings for movies for a reason. We have PG-13, we have R. But now reading about, a teddy bear wanting to be a girl instead of a boy is like apparently wholesome content for 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds, which I don't understand. But neither here nor there. You can read to your child what you want. But what does it say when leaders in a city are promoting that stuff to the entire population, to the entire city at large? Is that appropriate from leadership? Especially when they're acting in their official capacity and they're doing it on the official Kansas City YouTube page, right? This is not the mayor doing something or anyone on the city council doing something on their personal pages as a private citizen. Hey, I just read my kid this book. No, it's acting in the official capacity as a Kansas City lawmaker. Is that appropriate? Is that something that represents the city well? You, as the Kansas City voter and as the Kansas City resident, are allowed to have an opinion on that. And it's got nothing to do with who anybody reads books to in their own homes in their own time. It's a completely separate conversation. And then the press secretary, who apparently spearheaded this whole thing, Sheree Honeycutt, shared the mayor's tweet and said, Kansas City is for everyone. Absolutely, it's for everyone. No one's saying it's not for everyone. No one's making a comment about transgender people. It's about, is it appropriate to read this stuff to 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds in their official capacity as taxpayer-funded employees? That's the question. Coming up next after the news on KCMO, the clip that we'll look back on if Donald Trump pulls it off in November. It's going to be a fun morning here on KCMO Talk Radio. Mayor Lucas will join me in 1 hour for his weekly Thursday spot. And yes, we will ask him right out of the gates about this viral video from 2 nights ago of many on the city council, including the mayor, reading a book about transgender teddy bears. I mean, things I wouldn't think I'd be saying this week after taking a couple of days off for the birth of baby number 3. But here we are. You can't predict the news cycle. John's in Topeka. Hello, John. Good morning.
Congratulations on baby number 3.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that, buddy.
I just felt something snap in my brain a second ago when you were talking about that, because it's just beyond my comprehension that anybody thinks it's okay to talk to 3 to 6-year-olds about sex if they're not the parents. And then they're just waiting in that pool of, I consider pedophilia. And, brother, that ain't what.
That ain't what? Sorry, it cut out there.
They're waiting in.
Sorry there, John. Are you there, buddy?
Yes, I am.
All right. It's cutting out on us, but I'm getting your point. I mean, when you say and suggest that it's borderlining on pedophilia, I mean, I think anybody who's talking to their own or any toddler, especially a toddler who's not their own, about sex, I don't think that's a controversial statement to make, to be totally honest. The whole thing. I mean, I've got a 5-year-old and a daughter who's going to be 3 in May. She's still learning how to speak, the soon-to-be 3-year-old. The notion that there's any opinion there's any thought process there about sex and gender and, body parts and things of that nature. I mean, interact with a 3-year-old and tell me how you can possibly come to the conclusion that they have any idea whatsoever what they're talking about, who they are, sex organs, or any of that stuff. I spend a large part of my day around toddlers, and I can promise you it never comes up unless you're indoctrinating them to some degree, in large part. So I got the majority of what you were going for there, John, and I agree. I also wanted to mention that Adam Dustman, who is the Independence police chief after they lost one of their own last week, he is going to be here in the studio at 8 o'clock this morning. So if you're typically at the office by then, make sure you're streaming us on the KCMO Talk Radio app at 8:05. Adam Dustman, Independence police chief, after they lost one of their officers in a tragedy last week. He is going to be here in the studio 8 o'clock on KCMO. Now, Super Tuesday came and went. Tonight is the State of the Union, and it's a big speech for Joe Biden. Does he make this political, or does he come off like a statesman? That's the biggest question around it. And we'll get to that here coming up in a couple of minutes. But before that, as we look back on this election cycle, Donald Trump is in a very good spot right now. If he can maintain a focused approach, if he can make the next 8 months about the failures of Joe Biden and the failures of the last 3 years, he will walk into the White House. There's no doubt about it in my mind. The economy, the border, foreign policy, everything is cutting in his favor right now as we sit here at least on March the 7th. But if we look back on November 6th, which is the day after the election, at a moment in time where Donald Trump may have solidified this thing for himself and for the Republican Party, it will be this clip from MSNBC, where MSNBC anchors Rachel Maddow, Joy Reid, and some of the others on this panel, who show how out of touch they are when it comes to the issue of immigration, which right now is at the top of most Americans' lists after 8.5 million people have come in illegally under Joe Biden. Take a listen to this clip.
I mean, if you look at some of these exit polls, I mean, I live in Virginia. Immigration was the number one issue.
Yeah.
I mean, again, these could change in Virginia.
Well, Virginia does have a border with West Virginia. Very, very contested area.
Build a wall. Like, what?
That was Rachel Maddow and Jen Psaki and Joyless Reid, talking about how these people in Virginia who care about immigration, yeah, the only reason they care is because there's some rubes in Western Virginia who border West Virginia. That's the only reason they care. Do you know that 2 weeks ago in Virginia, an illegal alien from Venezuela was arrested and charged with sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl in Campbell County, Virginia? He crossed illegally into El Paso, Texas in September of 23 and was released into the U.S. by the federal government. Oh, do you think they knew that? Do you think Jen Psaki and Rachel Maddow and Joy Reid know anything about that story? Literally 2 weeks ago in the state of Virginia that happened. Of course, we know the Laken Riley story, the poor Georgia college student, and what happened to her a couple of weeks ago now, today. Joe Biden can't even say her name, either because he forgot it or doesn't want to say it. I don't know, but he won't say her name publicly. But that happened in Virginia. And for the elites of the elite to sit up there on a television set on Super Tuesday and mock Virginians across the political spectrum who realize the immigration policy of this administration is unsustainable and is not good for working folks in this country. It's not good for anybody in this country to have 8.5 million people come in and have no idea who they are. For them to sit there on the high horse and make comments like that basically you're a dumb rube if you care at all about what's gone on with the border in this country the last 3 years, is truly a stunning admission of out of touchness. That's what we're dealing with here. People who are so caught up in their own bubble and have no idea what the average American in Virginia is feeling, here in Kansas or Missouri, or anywhere else across the country. They are clueless. And that will be a moment, if and when Donald Trump does win in November, we look back to when we say this was just part of the story. This was part of the story when it comes to these people being so wildly out of touch that they don't realize what is important to the average American citizen right now, who has seen their groceries go up by 20% the last 3 years, who has seen, working class folks get more competition in the labor market because of people who have no business being in the country to begin with. It's not an anti-immigrant thing. It's an anti-illegal immigrant thing. Get it right. I mentioned the other day when I came back yesterday, the amazing labor nurse that we had on Sunday. Lady who's been in this country for a couple of decades by way of Tanzania. Came to KU, got her green card, became a nurse, got married, loves America. That's the immigration story. When you talk about productivity in a place where we need it, like nursing, those are the kind of things that we love to see. That's what makes America great. We bring in the best of the best from around the world through a process that is fair, that is just, and that benefits the American economy. Nothing that the people in power over the last 3 years have done does a damn thing to benefit the working man or woman and benefit the economy at large in this country. And that statement from MSNBC right there was as telling as anything on the issue. 913-408-7957. Now, for the State of the Union. What's it going to be from Joe? What are we going to get out of him? What do you want to hear from him, if anything? I guess outside of as little as possible. The fact that I got to sit down and watch this thing tonight for you guys, this is when I put in for the hazard pay at the job. 913-408-7957, 644 on a Thursday morning. We'll get to that next. Mayor Lucas at 7:30 on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. What do you want to see Joey do tonight? State of the Union. That's right. It may be the most important speech of Joe Biden's presidency because of when this speech is coming, an election year. He's trying to get reelected. He's going to have to beat Donald Trump to do it. And does he use tonight as a basically political speech? Or does he use it as a speech to pretend to be a statesman? Yes, I said pretend. Because he hoodwinked many Americans, millions of independents back in 2020 by saying he was going to bring common sense and decency back to the White House. And it's pretty easy to point to a plethora of examples over the last 3 years of how that turned out to be completely untrue. But will he try to hoodwink Americans back into that place of him being the man of decency and honesty and straightforwardness and all those different things over Donald Trump? Or will he just go after Donald Trump? Well, according to a new report from Axios this morning, it's going to be the latter. And if he does that, it will be suicide for Joe Biden. But it might be the only chance he's got. Axios writes here, Biden plans feisty economic reset. Joe Biden will use tonight's State of the Union address to admit that prices are still too high in some areas. You don't say.
Talk about a bombshell.
But argue things were worse under former President Trump. Okay. That's going to be the approach, huh? The absurdity of this approach by Team Biden is that Americans have long blamed COVID, not Trump, for the economic issues of 2020. And if they are going to attempt to rewrite history, that is a terrible idea. But it may be all that Joe Biden has at this point. So Axios writes here, Biden, in what could well be the most important speech of his presidency, aims to project fighting optimism to an audience with plenty of doubts about the nation's vigor and that of the 81-year-old president. Biden needs a cure for what some advisors call Trump amnesia. The notion that the chaos and unpopularity of Trump's presidency has receded from some voters' memories nearly 4 years later. So if this speech tonight becomes about Donald Trump, then Joe Biden is showing his weakness. Just like he's showing his weakness, or his team is showing his weakness, by basically publicly begging for a Taylor Swift endorsement 8-9 months out of the election. That is so pathetic. If you are 8 to 9 months out of an election and you are viewing your best chance of getting reelected as talking about, yeah, I may suck, but boy, don't forget about that guy Trump, and or, please, Taylor, please help me. Taylor Swift, I need you. I need you desperately. Please help me out here. What's going on? If that's what you're doing in 2024, February, March of 2024, to try to get yourself elected or reelected, you've got nothing, man. You have got absolutely nothing to hang your hat on. You can't talk to the American people about how well you've done for them. You can't do any of that. You can't talk about foreign policy successes. You can't talk about, God forbid, the border. You can't talk about economic successes when prices are up 15, 20% during your presidency. You can't do any of that. So you're going to go back to the drawing board and make it about Donald Trump in a State of the Union address, which is supposed to be at its very core an opportunity to bring Americans together and talk about what a great job you're doing. You're instead going to make it a political speech about your predecessor and the guy you're going to go up against this year. I mean, that is just suicide from this team, Biden, if they choose to go that route. 913-408-7957. Let's go to Paul. He's in Kansas City. What's up, Paul? You're on KCMO. Good morning.
Hey, Pete. As soon as he goes, old man, get off my grass mode, that's when everybody will start tuning out. When he starts doing that, old man, get off my grass. But the problem with Biden and what we're having, I look down at Quick Trip right now, gas is $3.30. There's nothing he can say to me tonight that I can't look at that billboard and say, good Lord, $3.30 for a gallon of gas in America? This is ridiculous.
It has gone up quite a bit the last few weeks, hasn't it?
Yes, it's been constant. When I look back at the Trump era, I'm like, well, it was $1.89 down in Gardner, Kansas in 2019. Now I'm paying $3.30 car insurance. That's what affects most people in America's car insurance is skyrocketed under Biden.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. Biden took money from Ukraine and China. He also took American savings. He took Americans' 401k. His policies have forced Americans to use a credit card to pay for rent and food to the tune of $1 trillion. He can't get away from that. That's what he can't get away from.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem they have. But he'll get that scowl on his face, and he'll start going, get off my grass, and everybody like, oh, man, this guy's old.
Yeah, you're right. That is going to happen. If I was writing this speech, thanks, Paul, I would make it as short and as sweet as humanly possible. I don't know if they'll do it, but keep this State of the Union to an all-time, record low of a half hour. At least for, recent history, that would be an all-time low. The longer they put him up there, the more vulnerable he is. Although, according to Joe Scarborough, Morning Joe, did you hear what he said yesterday? This is great. I mean, it's not, but it's hilarious.
Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth.
All right, Joe. I'm about to tell you. Start the tape right now. All right, the tape is started there, Big Joe Scarborough. Let it rip, big fella.
And F you if you can't handle the truth.
F you if you can't handle the truth. All right. F you too, Joe. Let's go.
This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it.
Could you imagine saying that with a straight face?
He's a sick guy.
Oh, man. I'm about to lay the truth on you. And F you if you don't believe it. This is the best Joe Biden has ever been. Even Joe's like,
come on, man.
I don't know about that. Wow. State-run television with Morning Joe Scarborough. And F you if you don't believe me.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe, F you for thinking I'm that stupid. And every other person.
There you go. And the horse you rode in on.
Yeah, seriously. Coming up, George Brett has spoken out on a new stadium for the Royals. And it's funny what he wants to keep from the old K. We'll get to it next. If you are still on the fence as a Jackson County resident and voter, as to whether or not you're going to vote yes on the 3/8 cent sales tax to help the Royals move downtown and to help upgrade Arrowhead Stadium. Does George Brett change your opinion? Well, George Brett spoke to KCTV5, and he had a great story about what he wants to keep from the old K when that thing does ultimately get demolished. But first off, he did talk about a new ballpark and what he wants to see happen. Here he is.
I'd like to see a new stadium built. I know they can't do one out there. Yeah,
I would like to see a new stadium built. I know they can't do one out there.
I'd like to see a new stadium built. I know they can't do one out there.
That was George Brett to KCTV5. Maybe you're like, I don't care what Patrick Mahomes thinks. I don't care what Travis Kelce thinks. But, George Brett I'll listen to. Now, that's just George speaking as George. That's not George in any official capacity with the Royals. He was doing that interview from his house with KCTV5. I didn't hear a guy who was like super passionate about it, but he said, yeah, I'd like to see a new stadium built. I know they can't do it out there. Well, I don't know if that's true. They don't want to do it out there for reasons that they've noted. They think the Royals ownership thinks there's obviously value in being downtown and helping downtown expand further south, including the crossroads and kind of merging those two parts of Kansas City into one. That's the vision, of course, for the team. That's what they believe is the best place for them to be as a business. And that's obviously their prerogative. But they're asking you for your money to help make it happen. They're not just making this business proposition. They're saying we need your help to make it happen. And that's what obviously makes this somewhat controversial. So we're sitting here with less than a month to go until the vote. And it's amazing. There's been a lot more talk on the no side of this than there has been on the yes side. The yes side has basically been kept to TV and radio commercials. There have not been a lot of interviews with folks on the yes side, whether it's ownership for the Royals or people involved with the team, or the Chiefs for that matter, who have come out and said, this is why this makes sense. Let's talk to people. Let's go to some of these community meetings. Let's do interviews like on this show. They're not doing a lot of it. I think in part they're hoping that their media blitz will carry the day. And it might. I've said that I think it's 60-40 this thing passes. But, there's a lot of voices who are speaking out against this, from progressive groups like KC Tenants, from outlets like the Kansas City Star Editorial Board, to libertarian think tank groups like the Show Me Institute and Patrick Tuohy, who talked about this yesterday on this show when he said in part, it was Mark Donovan who said in a press conference last week, the president of the Chiefs, Mark Donovan came out and he admitted that they're not going to build up around Arrowhead Stadium because there's not enough of an economic advantage in doing that. And Patrick Tuohy said that's the exact point he's been trying to make for a long time, that these stadium projects are not economic drivers like these teams claim they are.
Well, people asked him in that press conference if they would, further develop the Truman Sports Complex, maybe put in an entertainment district or something like that. And he said, look, it doesn't make economic sense for us to do this. And what that basically means is what people have pointed out all over the country is that stadiums by themselves do not grow the economy. And the point that anyone can make is you look at a map of Truman Sports Complex on Google and you'll see that there's no development around it. And that demonstrates, and his comments demonstrate, that stadiums are not the economic drivers that they want us to believe.
Patrick Tuohy yesterday on this show from the Show Me Institute. And that's the case that's being made on, interestingly enough, the libertarian conservative side and then also on the progressive side. These two sides have come together against the 3/8 cent sales tax, which is fascinating. These are two groups oftentimes that have nothing in common, but here they are coming together on this issue. Now, there's still about, 3 weeks to go until 3.5 weeks to go until voting day, April 2nd here in Jackson County. But I believe the teams are coming off like they've got this thing in the bag. And while I think they certainly have an advantage here with their media blitz, with the Chiefs winning another Super Bowl, if you're going to get people out to vote on April 2nd, you need them to be enthusiastic about it, right? This is not August during a primary. This is not November. You need people who are going to be out there and are going to be enthusiastic. And right now, I sense a lot more enthusiasm on the no side than I do the yes side, John.
Yeah, you make a good point that strange bedfellows are coalescing here with a same opinion, but I think the same could be true for the yes vote. It's just that they're not organized. I think there are Democrats who are in favor of the stadium. There are Republicans, or we get into the different, viewpoints. So it's just the yes vote is not coalescing any of its strange bedfellows, if you will.
Yeah, that's true.
Possibly.
And they're very quiet about it.
Well, yeah.
And I was talking to someone who's, in the middle of this whole thing down in the Crossroads. And they said some of the biggest faces in Crossroads businesses are for the stadium. But they're scared to death of having, the no folks come after them. They're afraid to come out in support of it publicly, even though they publicly or privately are fans of the stadium moving downtown. So until those people start speaking, the perception right now is that there's much more enthusiasm on the no side. Now, as for George Brett, he did tell KCTV5, if and when the K goes away, there's one thing and one thing only that he wants out of the old stadium.
Yeah, it would be tough for me. I'll probably break down a little bit when I see the bulldozers going in there. And the thing about me, I grew up in locker rooms my whole life. And when I built this house, I have a urinal. In fact, we have 5 of them in this house. I'm going to exchange one, and I want to get a urinal out of Royal Stadium and put it in my house. That's the only thing I want. I don't want a seat. And I remember when they took down Yankee Stadium, a friend of mine was vice president of the Yankees back then, Arthur Richmond. And I called him. I said, Arthur, I'll pay for this. I want someone to go in there before they demolish that stadium and go get a urinal out of the Yankee Stadium locker room. The one that Babe Ruth went to the bathroom, and the one that Lou Gehrig, the one that Reggie. I want one of those in my house, and he couldn't get it for me. But how great would that be to have Babe Ruth's urinal in your house right now? I can honestly say. So I'm going to get one if they demolish that stadium. I promise you, I'm going to go there in the middle of the night with the guy that built this house. I'm going to say, come on, we got to figure out how to get one of these things out of here.
George Brett wants a urinal from Kauffman Stadium. That's it. Get the man his urinal.
Hopefully they clean it.
You know what? Doesn't sound like George cares.
No, I don't think he does.
He just wants a damn urinal. And he's got 5 urinals in his house, which I freaking love. I mean, now that I'm surrounded by all girls. I got 4 girls around me. I could use a urinal. I don't have to worry about putting the seat down. Just give me a urinal somewhere in the house. I'll walk upstairs for it. I don't need 5 like George. I'll take 1 urinal and be a happy man.
I wonder if it's the Florida shoulder kind or if it's the one that's like up off the ground a little bit. Yeah.
You don't want the one that goes down to the ground. I mean, it splatters all over your legs. You don't want that.
Yeah, those work pretty good. A friend had one, and he literally had a home plate laid in right at the base. He stepped up. I'm not sure if the house used to belong to Steve Palermo or not. There was a home plate right as you walked up to a stand-up urinal.
Oh, that's amazing. That is amazing. 913-408-7957 on KCMO Talk Radio is how you join us. 7:52 in just over 10 minutes from now, we'll have the Independence Police Chief Adam Dustman in our studios. He, of course, is still dealing with the death of an officer last week after that shooting at a home in Independence. Do not miss that conversation here on KCMO and the KCMO Talk Radio app. Every Thursday, the mayor appears on this show. Quentin Lucas was here for the last 15 minutes. And as always, a lot of topics, doozy of a conversation. 913-408-7957. Victor's in Parkville. He's next up. Hello, Victor.
Good morning, Pete. Congratulations on your 3rd princess.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, the 3rd princess in the family, born on 3/3. Very appropriate.
Absolutely. I saw the Facebook post. I thought it was very cool.
Thank you.
Lovely family.
Thank you.
It's as always, I appreciate Mayor Lucas coming on at least once a week and saying what he has to say and dealing with some of the issues dealing with our city. Even though I'm in a suburb, it's still my city. I consider myself, a member of the Kansas City community. I like that he wasn't dancing as much as he usually does. He was actually addressing the issues that there, and he was dealing with them head on. And I understand, believe it or not, I actually liked his answer or more accurately, understood his answer about reading the book.
The transgender teddy bear book.
The transgender teddy bear book, as far as the message that went, the podcast or the video that went out, because, and I understand it from his perspective. Indoctrinating pre-adolescents to the radical transgender movement does not go against his moral compass. So where you or I would find it abhorrent, he does not, because from his perspective, it's not abhorrent. He doesn't see that it's any great shakes, and to him, he is representing everyone in the city, so he doesn't have a problem with doing that. I couldn't do it. But that's just me.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's, and he did also make note that he doesn't own the book, and he basically said he's not reading that book to his own child. So
I agree.
He admitted a lot of things there that I wasn't sure he was going to admit and say. He basically said, I ain't doing this in my house, but essentially someone asked me to do it, so I did it, and I still don't get the political calculation. The downside is so much greater than the upside. I don't understand it. But at least he was honest about saying, I'm not reading it to my kid.
Right. What's the real downside? He's not running for re-election. If anything, it makes him appear or gives him greater appeal to the broader liberal Democrat party as far as on a national scale. He is what he's going to be. He's not. If you're talking about the political downside, it only goes against the conservative Republican side, which.
I disagree. I disagree. I think there's a lot of apolitical independents who are like, no, of course I don't want, my mayor or my 3-year-old being read about transgender teddy bears. I mean, of course I don't want that. I think it's a much broader. I think there's a lot of moderate Democrats who would be like, nah, that's not my thing.
I understand your point of view. But by the time that actually becomes a poignant subject in any office he seeks or in anything else he seeks in the future,
it's
it'll
old
be
news.
swept under the rug.
Let's
It'll
be
be
honest.
forgotten.
It's old news by Monday. I hate to say that, but it's true. It's old news by Monday.
Absolutely. 100%. We won't even be talking about it next week.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's tells you where the news cycle is at. But you're right. I mean, that's where it's like, all right, he and I have talked about this issue before, transgenderism, kids. Yeah. It's on many of the podcasts that he and I have done on this show. You can go back and listen to those. So I know I'm not changing anyone's opinion on this, but I just don't get the calculation with the book. So
I think it was he's just trying to be of service. He personally doesn't go for it, but he's just trying to he's trying to be of service, and I get that. And as far as Joe Biden goes tonight, it's just I think the nation's going to actually see the gradual decline as the State of the Union goes on. There is no upside for him going over a half an hour. You are 100% correct.
Yeah, thank you, Victor. I would keep it at 30 minutes tonight for Joe Biden. And I know that these State of the Unions get longer every year. There's more applause, there's more claps, there's more, backslapping than ever. Some of these things, I'll have to look them up, but they'll run. I mean, hour 10, hour 20 over the last generation or so. I mean, Bill Clinton started making them longer. Bush had long ones. Obama put these things on steroids, and Trump kept the gravy train going.
Yeah, to your point, I don't know if he could go half an hour. I figure 15 minutes in and he's lost. But I didn't factor in the applause, so I figured Congress is getting instructions like people at the Super Bowl when you're supposed to flip cards and things to make designs in the stands. They're going to say, clap here for at least 2 minutes to buy Joe time to regroup.
Buy him time.
Yep.
I heard, where did I hear it? But one of Bill Clinton's State of the Unions, they put in the wrong script in the teleprompter. And for the first 10 minutes, Bill Clinton ad-libbed his State of the Union. Could you imagine Joe ad-libbing anything? Wow. Oh, man. It's going to be a rough few days. Please do say a prayer for the Independence Police Department and everybody in that community, the family, what they're going to be going through in the not just days ahead with the funeral service scheduled tomorrow for Officer Cody Allen, who was killed in the line of duty last week after that eviction went haywire. in Independence, but also, of course, the family of Drexel Mack, which right now is requesting more privacy, as we understand it. So we're going to honor that. But, man, these are tough times for a department that has been through a hell of a lot the last couple of years, more than any department of its size should be dealing with. 913-408-7957. Mike Steinmeier is checking in, former Independence City Councilman on KCMO. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Pete. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Hey, congratulations on your third little girl. That's
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
I appreciate, Pete, that you asked Chief Dustman to come in and talk about, the tragedy that has taken place. I just want to say that Chief Dustman has been just a huge inspiration in Independence as a young chief of police. I think he is proving every day that he can help this profession in many, many ways, and I think he'll do great in communicating and recruiting and making sure that people understand the dangers of that job. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to bring him in and talk to him. Independence is very blessed to have him and his command team and all of them that serve this community without question.
Thank you very much for that, Mike Steinmeier. Appreciate it. It was the first time I had the chance to meet Chief Dustman, and I was very impressed. And you're right, young guy, understands the modern challenges of policing. And listen, it's a very different world right now than it was just 3.5 years ago in this profession. Every department you talk to is down. Independence down. We know Kansas City is down. We talk about that on a regular basis. Olathe, where we did our last Back the Blue tour, Olathe, Kansas is down. So it doesn't matter. Suburban communities that have a lot of money that they put into their departments, they're down. Like, we understand why urban departments might be down based on crime and lack of support and crazy politicians and things like that. We know why rural departments are down. I mean, rural communities are shrinking in front of our eyes, left and right. So we know why they're down and they're struggling and some of the issues that they have. But suburban communities, theoretically, that have less crime and are safer places and back the blue and all those things, they're down. So it is across the board right now. And you're going to need good young chiefs to lead the way going forward, because it may take a generation to get the numbers back to where they need to be across law enforcement in general. The amount of damage that was done in 2020 by politicians, by activists, by the media, for policing at large, I believe that we're going to look back, and that moment in time, that year, the whole George Floyd thing will set policing back a generation. It will take a generation to get the numbers back to where they need to be. And think about how many lives are going to be lost because of lack of policing in communities around the country in the wake of the insanity of 2020. Not even just the insanity, the stupidity, the just ridiculous approach that people took of swinging the pendulum all the way to the other end. Not that every cop is the greatest guy or gal in the history of mankind, but these are people who choose to put their lives on the line every day for the rest of us. And to admonish that organization and to say, well, criminals really aren't that bad, and take that entire approach that they took 4 years ago now, will go down as one of the most moronic things we've ever done in modern American history. And the proof is going to be in the numbers. Now, speaking of really dumb ideas, how about this? I saw it this morning. This comes from Congressman Emanuel Cleaver. And I'm reading this off of the Woke 41 website. Emanuel Cleaver is reintroducing a bill that would withhold 1 month's pay from every member of Congress for each month a mass shooting occurs in the United States. Cleaver first filed his No Pay Until Peace Act in May of 22. He said he's reintroduced the bill after 80 mass shootings have impacted the nation. 3 of those mass shootings took place in Cleaver's own district. Missouri District 5. 6 people were shot at Crown Center, January 18th. Of course, we know about the Super Bowl rally shooting. And then they reference the Independence police officer and civil process server who lost their lives just last week. Is this not the dumbest idea of all time? Now, I'm not a fan of paying people in politics. I mean, my goodness, it's not like I'm defending members of Congress getting their paychecks for crying out loud. I am not interested in doing that. It's not about them. It's about how stupid of an idea this is. So let me get this straight. Because a bunch of thugs who had, by the way, criminal backgrounds and were carrying illegal guns brought them to a Super Bowl parade and shot people and killed a woman, Lisa Lopez Galvin. Some congressman in North Dakota shouldn't get his paycheck? Do you want anybody of substance to be in Congress? Or do you just want it to be a bunch of old rich people who can afford to not take a paycheck when somebody, does something horrific like shooting up Crown Center or shooting up a Super Bowl parade or shooting a gun out of their home because they're about to get evicted? I can't even wrap my head around what a bad idea this is and what an empty promise this is from Emmanuel Cleaver. Like, he should be embarrassed to even introduce something like this. Because even if you're someone who's like, yeah, I mean, it sounds good. No pay until peace. No pay until peace. That's the name of the act, by the way, from Emmanuel Cleaver. No pay until peace. How about this? All right, whether it's Crown Center, whether it's the Super Bowl, how about you do this novel idea, crazy concept of understanding we live in a world where you are not going to get perfection. But you hold people accountable, especially those who have a criminal background. Once again, what is this really about? This is about not holding criminals accountable for their own actions. Let's blame Congress members from California and Maine for a shooting that happens in Kansas City. Wow. Brilliant. I can't think of a better idea than that from Emmanuel Cleaver. My goodness.
Well, unfortunately, these things happen frequently, so it might be a way to save him to hack into the deficit a little bit, right? I mean, they wouldn't be getting paid at all.
Yeah, no, they would never get paid.
Yeah.
To your point,
Yeah.
you literally would have members of Congress just all working for free.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's ridiculous about it. And I also am always intrigued by the definition of mass shooting. I think that needs to be brought up here as well. What happened at Crown Center was a gang-related shooting. I mean, we know that now. These guys who were arrested and have been charged were members of gangs on the east side of Kansas City. We don't know if there's officially a gang element yet involved in the Super Bowl rally shooting, but we know that it was gang-related with the shooting at Crown Center. That, by the way, nobody was killed, thank goodness, but resulted in multiple people getting shot. So to sit here and say, is this the traditional sense of a mass shooting? And I hate that you got to talk about it this way, but when you think of that term, you think of some of the tragedies that have taken place, God forbid, at schools and public places where the goal is to just take as many lives as you can innocently. The Super Bowl rally and the Crown Center thing appear to be targeted at individuals where then innocent bystanders got caught in the crosshairs. Those are two very different things. But if you just put it all under one umbrella, this is how you get the ridiculousness of Emmanuel Cleaver proposing and filing a bill of this nature, No Pay Until Peace Act. As if somehow the worst human beings, who, by the way, have been told by not necessarily Emmanuel Cleaver, but some of his colleagues in Congress that, don't worry, when you commit crimes, you're actually the victim in all this. You're a victim of a society that lets you down. When you promote ideology like that, and then criminals just run wild and not hold accountable, and there's, soft on crime prosecutors all over the country, including right here in Jackson County, you think that you're going to stem the tide by doing what? Passing a bill like this? I'm sure the criminals are thinking, gosh, if the Congress members can't get paid, I'm going to stop, shooting people. I'm definitely going to stop committing crimes because the hacks in D.C. aren't collecting a paycheck anymore. That'll hold me accountable. You have to be beyond dense to think that this does anything to curtail violence in Kansas City or anywhere else. And Emmanuel Cleaver knows better. Some of you might say he doesn't. I believe he does.